Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for this webinar on the Massachusetts Wraparound Coaching Initiative. My name is Kelly English. I am a Senior Associate at the Technical Assistance Collaborative. I'm joined here today by Jack Simons from the Executive Office of Health and Human Services and Laura Conrad from Mass Health Office of Behavioral Health. Just to give you a bit of a background and purpose for the webinar today, the primary purpose of the webinar is to provide information to potential coach applicants and the CSAs who employ them about the application and hiring process. So we will be prioritizing those questions today that come into us that are specific to the application and hiring process. We do plan in the future to have another webinar or call later in the spring that's specific to the coaching process and how it'll look on the ground at the CSAs. But today's call is primarily focused on the application and hiring process for potential coaches. Just a few housekeeping items before we start today's webinar. Just to acquaint you all with what you're going to be able to see, what you're seeing on your screen. You'll be able to see the slides here on your screen. On the left-hand side should be the viewer through which you see the presentation. To the right is the GoToWebinar control panel where you can that you can use to type in questions. We are not going to be opening up the webinar today to the phones for live questions via the phone, but if you do want to ask a question at any time during the webinar, please use the dialog box there, type in your question, and we will be able to see that here on our end. We hope to leave plenty of time for questions at the end, so please at any time if anything occurs to you, please feel free to type it into that dialog box. Just one other quick note before we begin. Today's presentation is being audio recorded. We do plan to make the webinar available to folks following the webinar, and we'll be sending out some information to you all about how to access the webinar slides and audio recording after today's webinar. Just briefly, just to tell you, orient you to who TAC is. TAC, or the Technical Assistance Collaborative, is a national nonprofit human services consulting firm. We are based in Boston, but we work nationally. We have over 20 years of experience providing policy leadership, technical assistance, and consultation to federal, state, and local government agencies. We work in the areas around evidence-based practice and working with helping states and county governments develop best practice services for youth involved with mental health, child welfare education, and our juvenile justice systems. If you want to learn more about us, please check us out at our website. So I am going to turn the next few slides over to Jack Simons from EOHHS, who's going to give a brief overview of the state's vision and purpose for initiating this coaching effort here in the Commonwealth.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to walk us through the next 3 slides, and what you're going to see there is going to be very familiar because basically we have the same goals and a very similar model to coaching now that we've brought it into Massachusetts to be an internal process. So basically there's going to be a lot of continuity from what you experienced with Jim and Susan and Brune Vandenberg. We're going to continue to use our wraparound fidelity measurement tools, and our goals will be essentially the same: to help CSAs reach and maintain high fidelity to share innovations across CSAs, to support system of care development. And one of the things we learned from coaching over the last 3 years is it's also one of the sources of information that helps us understand what challenges CSAs are experiencing and how they're doing. So those are essentially the same goals that we've had in the past. We'll go to the next slide. Roles and responsibilities will also be similar to the functions that Jim and Susan and their colleagues had when they were here in Massachusetts. We do see this as really a pretty challenging role for people stepping into coaching for the first time, even though we expect that we're going to have some really seasoned and capable coaches. So a big part of our initial effort is going to be to support those coaches, to meet frequently with them. They'll also have consultation from Jim and Susan. And we're going to be spending a lot of time looking at how coaching is working for CSAs and for the coaches, and we will probably be making some modifications over time as we learn from that. So once again, I think our approach to coaching is that it's like Wraparound, that it's going to be based on understanding the needs and the strengths of the CSAs, working collaboratively to develop plans for CSAs, including both issues that are prioritized by Mass Health and EOHHS and CSA-identified issues. Okay, next. So coaches will be paired with CSAs, both care coordinator coaches and family partner coaches. We'll expect them to develop strong supportive relationships with CSAs with good mutual communication. We do not see it as the job of the coach to do training that's the responsibility of the CSA. All the CSAs have the training materials, and you know that it's your job to train your staff. Coaches are there to help you understand that process and improve it if you need to, and to help you work on fidelity issues. I just wanted to add, we know it's been a long time that you've been waiting for coaching, and I think the most important explanation for the lapse of time that's important for you to understand is that we really wanted to have strong infrastructure for this program. So the coaching program would be a highly predictable and standard process that we'd be able to do very good evaluation on an ongoing basis. And so getting our colleagues at TAC engaged, we think is going to help us provide what is for you a very high quality process going forward. So that's all I have to say at this point.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jack. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the assumptions and models. Some of you who are at the CSA statewide meeting may have already seen some of these slides, so they may be familiar to you. But just so you have a sense of kind of what we're thinking as far as the assumptions and model here, we are planning through the application process that you all have, seen by this point, hopefully, to select 5 family partner coaches and 5 care coordinator coaches. So we hope to have a total of 10 coaches who will be deployed throughout the Commonwealth and who will primarily be working in pairs together and assigned to CSAs. You know, 1 family partner coach and 1 care coordinator coach would be assigned to a CSA together and kind of be working collaboratively. We're thinking about having a regional model where the family partner coach and the care coordinator coach are assigned to CSAs within a certain region. We may make some adjustments and modifications to that depending on how things go, who we get to as applicants, and the particular needs of each of the CSAs. But in general, that's how we're thinking that this model will kind of work, at least at the beginning. Each coach will be assigned 6 or 7 CSAs that they will be assigned to be working with. We anticipate that there will be a monthly meeting that we will be facilitating on our end, where we bring all of the coaches together to talk about how the coaching is going, and have all of you, the coaches, working together around some kind of peer supervision and support. We also anticipate having Susan Thorne, Jim Rast from VVDB available as well during some of these meetings to provide support and consultation to the coaches as you all are kind of beginning to hit the ground with your CSAs on the coaching. This slide, again, just kind of represents the model that we're anticipating, where a care coordinator coach and a family partner coach would be working with a group of CSAs that both of them are assigned to together. As far as hours and time, depending on how many CSAs that the coach is assigned, you will have between 22 to 25 hours per month dedicated to the coaching role. This is all inclusive of direct time as well as their indirect time. And so when we talk about direct time, we mean time that's spent directly providing coaching to CSA staff, whether that's on-site or virtually through some kind of webinar or conference call or Skype, some mechanism like that. The remainder of the time would be within that 22 to 24-hour time would be dedicated to attending the monthly coaching meetings and supervision, travel time, any documentation that's required, doing background research, preparing materials, that type of thing. So that's basically, and those hours were created kind of based on, in part, the time that CSAs had indicated in a survey that was sent out last year about how much time that they were seeking in coaching. It also is, in part driven by some of the funding issues on and how much time that we had for that. And that's kind of primarily what how we came up with the number of hours that would be dedicated, that each coach would have dedicated. Again, as Jax mentioned, this is our starting point for this coaching service. This is something that we will be kind of monitoring and assessing as time goes on about how much time, is it too much, is it not enough? So that's something that we'll be looking at over time and trying to stay in good contact with all of the CSAs about that. Just as far as applicants, coaches must be current CSA employees. The reimbursement for the coach's time is going to be directly to the sponsoring CSA, not the individual coach. So we will be planning to reimburse coaches separately for their expenses that they may incur, specifically mileage or toll costs as they're driving around the state. Those are something you would invoice us for separately, and we'll have more details about that and be talking with folks, the selected coaches, exactly how that process will work. Another responsibility that we are envisioning is around these regional learning collaboratives that the coaches would be responsible for. We are envisioning a quarterly seminar that the coaches would facilitate. These seminars, the topics would be driven by the needs and interests of the CSA staff in that region. We envision having some kind of survey or some other way to kind of assess what are the what would be appropriate topics for these seminars. Again, we're envisioning that these seminars would occur quarterly. They'd be approximately, say, 3 hours long. Again, the time spent planning and participating in these regional learning collaboratives would come out of that 22 to 25-hour time. It's not in addition to. So just so you know that, we're thinking that CSA attendance at these seminars would be optional but encouraged. Now the question that we know everybody was most interested in today, though this was in the cover letter in the application, is around reimbursement. So we are envisioning a reimbursement model where coaches with 6 CSAs, the CSAs who employ them would get a little over $1,400 per month that they would invoice us for, and coaches with 7 CSAs, the CSAs who employ that coach would get a little over $1,600 a month in reimbursement. As I mentioned earlier, coaches are going to be directly reimbursed for the mileage and tolls. We also envision that each CSA that employs a selected coach during this pilot phase will receive a one-time administrative advance of $3,500 per coach. So if one CSA has 2 coaches, each coach is going to get that $3,500. Each provider, each provider is going to get the money, not the coach, the CSA, but it's going to be it's a per coach allotment. Just as far as kind of what those funds are intended for is really to kind of help offset some of the potential costs that CSAs may incur around freeing up the time of that coach. However, you're thinking that you may do that, whether that's, hiring additional support, that's kind of up for you to kind of decide, but that was originally the intention around that $3,500 administrative payment. So just moving on to the application process. The application is divided into 3 parts. The first part, which is page 1 of the application, is where you would be completing, your name, address, giving us some other kind of demographic information, as well as providing some information about the CSA that is sponsoring the coach. We also are wanting people to indicate the region that you're interested in offering ICC or family partner coaching on a 1 to 5 scale, where 5 would be the region where you're most interested in providing coaching, down through 1 being the area or region where you're least interested in providing coaching. The second part, and this is a Word document, so people should be able to type right into the application, save it, and send it back to us. The second part of the application is for letters of reference and a resume that will be included as kind of attachments or amendments to your application. So we are looking for a letter of endorsement from a CEO or other senior leader at the CSA, whether that's a VP of Community Services or a COO, but somebody who's at a fairly high level within the organization who has the kind of authority to release you from your job duties, who can endorse your work, and provide a brief plan about how they are envisioning freeing up some of your time to focus on the role of coach. So you'll see within the application some of the specific pieces that the letter must specifically address around the recommendation, releasing the applicant from working hours, and how they're going to ensure that services and supervision of staff will be addressed. So that's the CEO letter. We also would like to have 2 additional references as amendments or attachments to the application. One reference must be from a family that you've worked with, whether that's a youth or a caregiver, that you currently provide care coordination or family support and training services to, or that you have within the last couple of years. If you are not currently in a role where you're directly working with families at the moment, then we will accept a letter from a peer colleague or a former supervisor, and that letter must address your skill in providing care coordination or family support and training services. So that's the one reference letter. The second reference letter should be from a staff member for whom you currently provide direct supervision, coaching, and support. And finally, we also are asking for a current resume to be included as an attachment or an amendment to the application. The third part of the application is the narrative response. We are looking for responses to 8 questions within the application. This section should be no longer than 7 single-sided pages, typewritten. We are wanting the answers to be in 12-point font. And again, just type your responses into the document, into the Word file, and you know, so you can send the full application back to us in that form. All right. Just to quickly review with you all the application and selection timeline. We released the application on March 20th. Applications are due back to me via email by 5 p.m. on April 12th. You see my email address there. If you experience any difficulties, you know, sending the application, please, you'll see my contact information at the end of the slide, so please feel free to give me a call or send me an email if you're experiencing any challenges with the application. We will be reviewing applications. A variety of folks will be working on reviewing the narrative responses and other aspects of the application. We'll have family representatives who are working with us, representatives from the managed care entities, folks here at TAC, EOHHS, and Mass Health, and VBDB. Susan and Jim will also be reviewing applications, so we'll have good representation of folks who are going to be looking through the applications. That review period ends on April 29th. We expect to start scheduling interviews with people who are kind of made it through the application process. And we will be contacting people to do those interviews. They will be here at TAC, which is in the Back Bay in Boston. You can see the address there. Just for your planning purposes, hold open on your calendars those May 2nd, 6th, and 7th days as best you can, so you're available to come in for a in-person interview. Following those interviews, we are hopeful that we will be able to offer coaching applicants and CSA leadership notification about the review committee's decisions by May 13th. And then we anticipate having a kickoff meeting the week of July 15th. We still haven't firmed down an exact day, but we should when we have by the time May comes, so applicants should know exactly when. But that will be a day-long meeting that will likely happen in the central part of the state, so people can kind of plan for that as well. So that is the kind of overview of the application and the coaching kind of effort. We are going to move into the question phase of the webinar now. Just a reminder, if you have questions, please type them into the dialog box that is over on the right-hand side of your screen. We have already gotten some questions from folks, so I'm going to proceed to try and answer as many of them as we can here. So one of the questions that's come in is about hoping to understand how the calculations were made for the amount of hours per CSA that were allocated, that 22 to 25 hour. I referenced this earlier, but you know, the hours that for the coaching were based on feedback about coaching we got from the CSAs last summer, as well as available funding. You know, the amount of time that the CSAs said that they were interested in having coaching varied a lot. Some CSAs were interested in having quite a bit of coaching. Others said they wanted very, very little. So we kind of arrived at what we thought was a decent middle ground around the number of hours. We think this is a good starting point. You know, we also wanted to make sure that the coaches had time dedicated, that they would be able to participate in supervision, you know, that there was time allocated for them to do some of that indirect work, and as we're starting up the coaching initiative, to provide feedback to us and to our colleagues at the state about how the coaching effort's going. So that's generally how we kind of arrived at those numbers. Another question that's come in is around the ICC and family coaches, family partner coaches being paired together for the assigned CSAs, and what was envisioned as far as teaming of those coaches. You know, we envisioned that having coaches kind of paired like this in a dyad, working together to become familiar with kind of the needs and strengths of a particular CSA made sense to us. We thought it would be a more efficient model in many ways, that you're kind of working closely with another coach, the family partner and care coordinator coach are working together, would be able to achieve some efficiencies around communication and coordination together. You know, this may not always work out neatly, you know, around issues of coach availability and that kind of thing, and we'll be talking with the coaches in the monthly meetings about how that's going. We'll be talking with you all, you know, through surveys or other forums to find out how that particular model is working out. So we'll see how that kind of works going forward. So another question that's come in is around when the coaching positions are offered, will the assigned region be made known at that time? I think we will try our best at the time to kind of make those assignments when we are making offers to coaches. We also expect that we will be talking with coaches potentially in the interview process about you know, where they are interested in serving as coaches. You know, we may make some decisions around kind of, they're based on kind of logistics as well, about travel time to various CSAs from coaches' work or home. So there's going to be those kinds of decisions that will factor into where coaches get assigned. So we hope to be able to do that, but I can't say for certain we'll be able to definitively tell people at the time that they're offered the position exactly what CSAs they're assigned to.
There's a related question here, which is, if you're assigned to an area in the state that's not one of your choices and you feel you cannot honor doing that location, can you resign your role? And I think it's fair to say we see this as a consensual relationship, so nobody's going to be forced to work in a part of the state that they can't manage. Obviously, coaches will be asked to make a commitment at the beginning, and that will include a commitment to go to whatever area they agree to cover, but nobody's going to be compelled to work in a certain area that they don't want to work. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think
okay.
That's fair to say. And I think if there's coaching turnover, our thought is that for that coach that decides they cannot do this any longer, that we would open up the application process at that point to hire another coach to bring in. Mm-hmm. Yep. In addition, there's a question about, is coaching mandatory for every CSA? And our thinking right now is yes. Just as we have in the past, we have made coaching mandatory, but the amount of coaching has varied based on the needs of the CSA. Another question that we've received is about, is there a vision for how much of the coaching time will be done remotely versus face-to-face? We've discussed this, and we do think that, at least initially, as the coaches are getting to know the CSAs, and vice versa, that face-to-face and on-site time is going to be really important, particularly in the beginning. We do appreciate, though, that remote coaching would be a lot more efficient for some purposes, and I think this will be one of those decisions that will be kind of made collaboratively between the coach and the CSA about the type of model that's going to work and how much time is going to be on-site versus virtual. We do know from the survey that was completed by CSA staff, CSA thought that about 24% of the coach's time would be spent kind of doing that type of virtual coaching via Skype or FaceTime or teleconferencing, that kind of thing. Another question that we've received is around what kind of evaluation will be done at the end of the coaching period, pilot period, to enhance the model going forward. And a follow-on question from that is, if the time that's been allocated isn't sufficient to meet the goals of coaching, will that be evaluated as well? You know, we do plan to conduct various web surveys and potentially doing calls with the CSA program directors and other staff about how the coaching effort's going, to learn about whether or not the time that's been allocated is sufficient, and how their relationship is going with their coach. So we do intend to kind of get regular feedback from folks, especially as the effort's rolling out. You know, if the coaching time is found to be insufficient and people aren't wanting as much coaching as they are getting, or it's too much, you know, we'll look for ways to address this within our budget. But, you know, at any time, I think we'll encourage folks to kind of give me a call and also talk with your coach as well about kind of your thoughts and opinions about how the coaching effort and the model we've originally envisioned is working. Because we'll be querying the coaches as well, you know, as we convene the coaches towards the end of kind of this initial coaching period, probably after 6 months, to kind of hear from the coaches their thoughts and opinions as well. So we'll be getting feedback from the CSAs, but also from the coaches to kind of hear about how folks are thinking it's going. And again, we'll be meeting with the coaches monthly, so we should be getting kind of real-time feedback from them, you know, about their thoughts. And so I think, you know, as you're meeting with coaches, you should be kind of talking with them about your opinions and thoughts so they can feed that information back up to us as well. There was another question about the $3,500 startup money and what it could be used for. You know, as I mentioned earlier, we had envisioned that this money would be used by the CSAs at their discretion to help them offset costs associated with freeing up that coach's time. But again, the CSAs have some latitude about how they would like to allocate those funds. There's been a question about the commitment time For this position, at this point, we are asking for a 12-month commitment, and then after the 12 months, both us and the coach would reevaluate that relationship and wanting to continue that relationship. But we are asking for a 12-month commitment, and we do understand, it's like Jack said, it is a consensual relationship, so if something came up, we do understand that, but we are looking for that initial 12 months. Another question that's come up is about the monthly fee. I think this may have to do with the traveling distance. You know, so the monthly rate that we've envisioned that depending on the 6 or 7, you know, CSAs that the coach is assigned is a flat fee. You know, coaches are going to get reimbursed separately for their mileage. So if a coach is traveling a long distance, you know, we are going to be reimbursing at the state mileage rate, which is currently about 45 cents a mile. So that money will go directly to the coach to offset their mileage costs. But there is not the you know, $1,400 or let's see, that reimbursement, the $1,400 or $1,600 that the CSAs are going to get is not going to vary depending on how far or close the CSA is from the coach.
Yeah, so their travel time will have to come out of that total number of hours allotted, and obviously that's more of a concern for coaches who have to travel a long way.
So that people, that one-time fee, so that people, or that, not one-time, but those monthly payments, that monthly payment is intended to go to the CSA/provider, and that this person that is a coach is being given time away from their normal hours of providing whatever supervision, whatever they do, to come do this 22 to 25 hours a month. It's reimbursing the agency for their time. And so it's expected that the employee, the coach, would still be a full-time employee of that provider, and that this money is compensating that provider for their time away from the agency.
Yeah, and there's a question here about, do we have a suggestion about how much coaches should be compensated out of the CSA's payment? That's really between the CSA and their employee.
There was also another question about scheduling. Our thought is that the coaches would maintain their own schedules. This would not be something that is done or facilitated by TAC, that the coaches would make their own arrangements during the month for that 22, 25 hours based on their schedule and their work that they need to complete at their own CSA and their time to be able to go away. But that is something they would do themselves, is to organize their schedule.
Should we address the certification question?
Sure.
So the question came up, is certification, what role will that play in coach selection? And it will play a role. It won't be the only factor considered, but it will be one of the factors.
There was another question about will there be coaches, will the coaches be, for the specialty CSAs, will there be a coach specifically for the specialty CSAs, or will they be regional coaches? Our thought right now is that they would be regional coaches. Someone asked if there's going to be media resources available around the virtual coaching. That's not something that's within the budget now for the this coaching effort. You know, TAC does have some resources to be able to support webinars. You know, so we can work on you with that, on developing some kind of a model like that. If you want to host a go-to meeting, you can certainly be in touch with us, and we can help facilitate that on our end. You know, but we don't envision purchasing, you know, AV materials specifically. We know that that's been supported in the past through the BBDB coaching. So we expect that many CSAs already possess kind of webcams and those kinds of things. So hopefully folks can utilize those. But again, some of the go-to meetings for the regional seminars, potentially, if you wanted to do it via webinar, we could work with you on hosting it that way. So if folks have other questions, please feel free to go ahead and type them into the box. We know that we're getting a lot of questions coming in. We hope to be able to, create some type of FAQ after this webinar that we can send out to folks. As well as I mentioned earlier, we hope to have the webinar made available to people after the presentation is over for you to be able to send to others within your organization who may not have been able to participate today and are interested in hearing some of this content. So when you get the information from us about how to access the webinar afterwards, please feel free to pass that along to your colleagues within your organization. There was a question that just came in about is there an expectation that people have be at least certified in Tier 1? That is not an expectation at all. I mean, that will be looked at, but it is not a requirement of the application process. So there's another question about the $3,500 reimbursement. Again, this was just, we arrived at that number, just assuming that, CSAs would be incurring some costs associated with this, but we aren't kind of mandating or telling CSAs how they have to use those monies. So you can use that kind of flexibly within your organization to offset any costs that you may incur initially. But again, the CSAs will be getting those monthly reimbursement payments for as long as the coach is kind of in that coaching role.
Yeah, we're expecting that these are going to be really key individuals, fairly senior and very experienced and skilled people. So we understand there's some pain and suffering involved in freeing people like that up in your organization. So really, it's not scientific, $3,500. It was just some attempt on our part to recognize that reorganizing your staff does cost you something and to give you something in return for that.
There's a question about how much coaching would each CSA receive and how is that being determined. I think it would be similar to the method that Rune Vandenberg did, that there would be a minimum amount and we would figure that amount, and then there would be a pool of hours that would be available for each coach to work out with the CSA for additional hours. So that's kind of the thinking behind how many hours. It hasn't been set by quality, per se, or quality improvement measures. It's really a negotiation. There'll be a minimum, but then it'll be a negotiation between the coach and the CSA and how many total hours available the coach has.
So there's another certification question, again, sort of saying if Tier 1 certification isn't expected, what do you expect? We really expect that these are very skilled wraparound facilitators and family partners, people with several years experience at least, who have shown evidence of being able to help other providers excel at their work, improve their practice. So, I mean, even though it's not required that people have certification, we're certainly going to be looking for evidence that people have been learning in every way they can and demonstrating skill in these roles.
There's another question, a clarification question just about the payment. So just to clarify, there's a one-time payment to the provider/CSA, and then the monthly payment goes to the CSA. So the only additional payment the only payment that would go to the coach is the travel. There is no additional separate money going to the coach. If coaches we'll be, just to follow along with Laura's point, the money is going to be going to to the CSA, to the employer. If the coach wants to negotiate something with their CSA, that's within their purview to do so, but that's not something that we are going to be kind of getting in the middle of, so to speak.
And I think our thought behind that is we are asking that in the application that your provider sponsor you, so there's already been an agreement of what that relationship, your relationship and payment is with them.
So nobody's asked this question, but I want to respond to a question that some people might have, which is, if it weren't for the money, why would I want to do this? Why would a CSA want to give up one of their sort of most experienced and skilled people, for a certain amount of dollars, which isn't going to make anybody rich? And I think, what we have come to believe is that we have very strong skills that have developed in Massachusetts over the last few years, and some, very talented people who ought to be able to extend their talents further than they can just through their own organizations. So we expect that these are individuals. It's going to be a great career opportunity, an opportunity to have a lot of statewide influence on wraparound practice. We hope it will help CSAs retain top people because it's a growth opportunity. And we also hope that we can contribute to people's growth and that they really feel this is a wonderful and exciting opportunity and a lot of fun to work with colleagues around something we really care about.
We do hope, as we're meeting with the coaches in these monthly coaches meetings, that we'll be getting feedback from the coaches about things that we can do here at TAC, the state, to kind of support them in kind of making sure that they have the tools that they need to be able to be effective coaches. So there may be some resources that we have on our end that we can work with the coaches to kind of help support you as you're getting out there and coaching. If there's specific things that you might need, that's something that we'd work with you on. Someone had a question about the monthly meeting location. We do expect that the monthly meetings are going to be happening in the central part of the state, so in the Worcester area, generally, somewhere. We haven't definitively determined a location, but we do want to try and, we won't be doing it here at TAC in Boston, so you can save your pennies for parking somewhere else. So we appreciate getting here into the city can be challenging, so we do want to make it at a location that'll be accessible to folks where there's parking and, where it won't be having to negotiate Boston traffic. And we do expect that some of those, not every month, initially these monthly coaches meetings will probably just to help folks develop rapport, get to know each other, and kind of develop that. Having FaceTime with one another will probably be the best model, at least initially. Though we do know that the more time that people are spending behind the wheels of their car means they're not spending on site with doing coaching. So we do anticipate that at some point we will be doing some kind of virtual meetings as well for the coaches to kind of help free their time up. So we may be using some kind of go-to meeting or a conference call. The monthly coaches, another question that came in was about the monthly coaching meetings included in the hours. That's correct. So that 22 to 25 hour time, the monthly coaches meeting is included within that 22 to 25 hour allotment.
There's a question about if your CSA already does regular wraparound training, how many hours you will be required to use for coaching. I guess our thought is the coach won't be just doing wraparound training. The coach could be helping.
Not really their function.
No, the coach could be helping your CSA with a number of issues or concerns or challenges that you're having that may not be related to wraparound. Could be staffing, recruitment, system of care meetings. It really will be developed, you know, what you use your coach for will be something that the CSA is working with the coach.
And I think as Jack mentioned earlier, you know, the coaching is not designed or intended at all to be kind of a replacement for or freeing up the CSAs from their responsibility to orient and train new staff in the wraparound model.
Yeah, and another thought about this sort of, do CSAs have to use coaching? I mean, part of the reason we're saying yes in the beginning is it's been quite a while since CSAs and Jim and Susan, you know, were working together, assessing their skill levels and their individual CSA training plans, development plans. So one of the first things we need to do is get coaches out to find out where are the CSAs now. It's been a long time that you've been working without formal coaching. A lot of you have been doing informal things or collaborative things in your own regions. We don't want to take that apart or get in the way of you doing those things. But initially, one of the things we're looking for is an opportunity for coaches to assess where are CSAs now and what are their needs. And once we've done that, we'll probably be able to give you a lot more or have a more detailed conversation with you about what we think is a reasonable level of coaching and what we perceive the needs to be.
I mean, our thought, too, is that the coaches would be more working with supervisors and administration, program director type folks, that they would really very rarely be working with direct care staff, if you will.
You know, in those regional seminars, it's possible that, you know, you might be sending your, if there's a regional seminar that's focused on how do you work with and engage DCS staff, you know, for example, you know, that may be the place where you would be sending a care coordinator or a family partner to kind of participate in one of those regional learning collaborative meetings. But, you know, the individual coaching time, we do envision it being more directed towards the leadership folks within the CSA, the seniors, and your program director staff.
So there's a question about what are the qualifications we're looking for? Does somebody have to have a detailed recall of the large number of individual RAP skills, you know, that are laid out in the VVD, all the specific competencies? I don't think we're looking for people who are walking encyclopedias. But we really do, if you look at the application, you'll get some of the sense of what we're looking for, which is people have a deep understanding of wraparound, obviously not just the theory, not just the principles, but has done a lot of wraparound and has learned from experience, has learned from coaching, can reflect on how they've learned from coaching, because that's one of the ways you learn to be a coach or a supervisor. So we're looking for really two classes of skills and areas of knowledge. One is about wraparound, but the other is how to help other people learn and improve their skills.
You know, I think just to add on to that, I mean, I think we'd be looking for someone, too, who can kind of take various pieces and parts of information and be able to kind of digest that and help the CSAs be able to come up with kind of good working plans about how they can kind of continually improve their practice and innovate along the way. So whether that's looking at, you know, the wraparound fidelity index information, whether that's looking at turnover rates within your CSAs, whether that's looking at graduation rates, you know, talking with various staff about kind of what's been their experience, you know, so I think that we'd like to have somebody who can kind of look at various pieces of information, make sense of that, and work on developing a good coaching plan with the CSA.
Yeah, that's good.
If people are looking for the application, what we can do after this is send the application out to the people that have registered for this, just to make sure that you all have it.
It should be available. Again, you know, folks should have access to our website, which again is www.tacinc.org. If you look under the Happening at TAC section of our website, various kind of announcements will kind of scroll through that section. There should be one around TAC Seeks Wraparound Coaches. If you click on that, it will take you to a news page where you can download the application as well as the cover letter and other materials. We had another question about what happens if you end up spending more than the allotted hours per month, and wondering if this is monitored by the coach. You know, we do envision, you know, to help us get a sense here and to help inform the coaching model going forward, we do want to learn about how much time people are actually spent in their direct coaching role versus some of the indirect time that may be spent. You know, it is going to be kind of up to the individual coach to kind of monitor how much time they're spending, but we will be kind of getting a monthly report from each coach that you'll be sending up to TAC to tell us, you know, how much time you spent with the various CSAs, what kind of activities that you engaged in during the month, you know, and so we'll have a sense in an ongoing way how much time, if people are spending many more hours doing coaching, you know, or many fewer hours, you know, we'll be getting that in kind of a monthly report. That it's another piece of data that we'll have to help us kind of get it, wrap our arms around whether or not the amount of hours is adequate. But, you know, again, that's that 22 to 25 hours. We're really hoping that folks can kind of stay within that amount of time. But and we'll be meeting with the coaches again monthly to hear some feedback about that as well.
We're about at the end of the time.
Yep. So we are going to wrap up now. You know, we're a little bit over time. We want to thank everybody for taking the time today to send in questions and participate in the webinar. We look forward to getting many applications from all of you out there. If you have questions in the meantime, we can kind of fast forward the slide here. So you should see my contact information there. So please feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and I'm happy to chat with you about any questions you may have. We do anticipate, like I said earlier, sending out the webinar information to you all so you can pass it along to your colleagues. So be looking for an email from us after this webinar. But thank you very much for participating, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.